Hey there. Today I want to talk to you about a few things that you should never buy with EBT and why. And that why is more important now than ever. So I'm going to level with you. I had prepared a video today on why you shouldn't buy certain things with EBT. And then all of a sudden, I found a whole bunch of other news that is related to this that we're going to be going over today. So, we're going to be leading with that why, because I think a lot of people aren't aware of what's going on right now with your SNAP data. And that really is a core part of why this is so important. So, as you already know from our other videos, the rules around what SNAP EBT is allowed to be used for are changing very quickly right now. We've got different states that are coming out with different rules, and we've done a lot of videos covering those changes recently. And you may remember from a couple of months ago that the USDA, the federal government there, said that they were going to be gathering more data on SNAP users and how those benefits are being used and so on. And, that was really hyped up for a little while. And then it got really quiet because the USDA paused that request back in June after they got all this pushback. But here's the thing, that was just a pause, that wasn't it going away. So on July 23rd, the USDA issued a new memo called SNAP Data Sharing Guidance. And in that, they once again requested data for everyone who receives or has received or has even applied to SNAP benefits since January 1st of 2020. They're asking for all sorts of records, including the names of your household members, the birthdays, the social security numbers, your residential and mailing addresses, all data that the office used to determine your eligibility or ineligibility, which of course is going to include everything that was on that application, including income and all sorts of things. But here's the other thing that I think isn't getting addressed enough. They're also asking for your transaction histories. In fact, this is a direct quote from the USDA memo here that says, additionally, transactional records from each household are also requested and must be sufficient to calculate the total dollar value of SNAP received by recipients over time, with the ability to filter benefits by all of these different metrics. So they are going to be looking into transactional history as well. In fact, I have a little few more quotes a little later on that shows kind of what they're looking for in those transaction histories. But ultimately, there's a lot of pushback on this, right? We've got a quote here from Nicole Schneidman at Protect Democracy talking about, we don't really know why they're asking for all this. This is a lot of data. They're saying it's part of that breaking down information silos thing that they've been working on. So, like I said, they made this request. I think it was back in May. By June, they said they were pausing it. And then they said, okay, well, we're going to open a public comment period, right? So they put the thing up on Federal Register, and people were able to come in and leave comments about how they felt about this data gathering effort. And NPR said that the USDA received more than 400 comments about this plan during that comment period, and their own analysis found that the majority of people were very critical about it. They didn't like it, but they're going to do it anyway, is what they ultimately decided. So this is actually happening right now. The data was, in fact, due on July 30th, so almost a month ago. But there is a lot that's going on with that, right? So a lawsuit, of course, has been filed saying that this is a violation of federal privacy law. The judge declined to intervene, it looks like, so that case is still moving forward. In the meantime, some states have expressed that this was an impossible request. From what I saw, I'd have to double check on the tab here. Yeah, the memo was issued July 23rd and said that that data was due July 30th. So they gave them 1 week to get all of that information together. And so a lot of states were like, you know what? That is just straight up not possible. Like, it's going to take 8 to 10 weeks, Texas said, just to get all of that information together in the way that the government wanted it presented. And then Kansas, of course, just flat out refused to cooperate and said, you're getting sued. If you guys get in trouble because this request was illegal, we don't want to have given you that information. So they're just saying no. Other states like Vermont have already started providing that data. So it's all very much a big mess. But like I said, okay, actually, we're going to get into that in a second here. So they are being asked to submit that data also through a system like Box or Movelt, which is like a commercial file sharing thing, which is alarming in and of itself because Movelt was blamed for the 2023 Medicare data breach. So that's not super secure. But in addition to that, they said on the Federal Register, because that's where you can get a lot of this information, they said that they're planning to use this data to verify eligibility based on immigration status, identify and eliminate duplicative enrollments, assist states in mitigating identity theft, perform other eligibility and program integrity checks. And then here is the thing, right? This is why this is a part of our video on what you shouldn't be buying with SNAP, because they also want to investigate and rectify fraudulent or otherwise improper or illegal SNAP enrollments or transactions. Okay. So they are, in fact, planning, as stated in the Federal Register, to go through and look at all of those transaction histories. Right. And like I said before, they're going all the way back to January 1st of 2020, which is going to encapsulate that period of time where a lot of SNAP households had extra SNAP coming in because we had those amazing COVID era pandemic. What do they call them? I reported on them for years. It was emergency allotments is what they called them, right? When everybody was bumped up and you were getting way more than usual in those SNAP dollars. So some people had extra money coming in. And I know from things I've seen on social media, some people made less than stellar choices with their benefits, which is, usually not something that I feel is my place to weigh in on. But that, I think, is part of what they're planning to look into here, which is going to be very concerning for a lot of people. So with that in mind, let's talk about what this means for you, right? Basically, it's more important than ever to make good choices with your benefits. The current focus on EBT, the way they're cutting things down and changing these restrictions and asking for this data sharing, is putting SNAP shoppers in the spotlight. And it means that your purchases may be subject to extra scrutiny, right? So now we're going to transition into what I had originally planned to share with you today, which was the things that you should never buy with your SNAP benefits and why you shouldn't buy them. And of course, full disclosure, if you've been here on the channel for a while, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a social worker, I'm a researcher. I've been running low income relief for goodness, 12 years now. So I spend a lot of time researching this stuff, and policies, of course, can change fast and may vary by state, county, and so on. This is all general information and not legal advice. You guys know the whole deal, right? So with that, let's move on here with just a quick shout out to our sponsor, Swagbucks. They're awesome. You can earn gift cards and other things. They'll pay you for using the internet, playing games, doing surveys, all sorts of stuff. You can check that out at the link that you see on screen. Now, without further ado, let's get to the point of what you should not be buying with your SNAP benefits. I think it's pretty clear by now we're talking about SNAP and not necessarily that EBT. And I do see people popping up in the chat now. That's awesome. I will be getting to the Q&A here in just a little bit. I got just a couple of more slides to go through with you guys. So when it comes to what you shouldn't buy, I'm going to assume that you already know that you shouldn't buy things like alcohol, cigarettes, that sort of thing. We'll get to the full official prohibited list here at the end, but I want to talk to you about the other things that actually trip people up more consistently. So EBT glitches and miscoded items. This is going to be the number one thing I'm going to tell you to stay away from right now. And if you've been here for a while, you've heard me say this over and over and over again. There are so many social media groups that are dedicated to helping you find the things that you shouldn't be buying with SNAP that have been miscoded and labeled as EBT eligible when they shouldn't be. This is especially common online through Amazon, Walmart, DoorDash, that sort of a thing. It's less common in store. For example, a couple of years ago on Amazon, you could buy a really expensive, like $200 specialty coffee maker. That was marked as SNAP EBT eligible, and some people bought it. It worked, so they shared it on social media, and it went crazy. Not great. Last holiday season, we did a whole overview on this when people were able to buy toys and Christmas things and stuff like that from Aldi through DoorDash. So like the screenshot you can see here is a social media post that somebody made where they talked about having to eat toys the rest of the month because they'd spent all their SNAP on these obviously non-food items. Now, there are consequences when those choices are made, right? That some of those shoppers had their DoorDash accounts deactivated. Other things can happen. Obviously, this isn't allowed if you intentionally buy something that is not eligible. Um, with EBT, that is considered an intentional program violation or an IPV. And we have a whole separate video. I think we have maybe 2 or 3 videos at this point about what constitutes an IPV and how serious those consequences can be. It can be a 12-month suspension from SNAP on your first violation. And then I think it's like a 24-month and then a lifetime. Like there's a whole thing there. So you should never, ever, ever intentionally buy something that you know shouldn't be SNAP eligible with your SNAP benefits, because that can be disastrous. And honestly, I suspect that part of the investigation that they're going to be doing into the transaction histories is going to be into this sort of a thing here. Because we've seen a lot of pushback, right? States are starting to say no soda, no candy, a lot of those things. And I just can't imagine that they're not also going to crack down on these EBT glitches as well. But that's, of course, conjecture. That's all me thinking things, right, and drawing my own conclusions. So no one has officially said that, but I would be very surprised if that wasn't part of what they're going to be doing, especially if they want the data so granular that they can see, where you're shopping and all of that. Like that's going to be a thing. So if you encounter these EBT glitches, these miscoded items, you can screenshot it and, notate it and send it to the customer support for that company to have them fix it if you want to. I have personally tried that in the past, and Amazon has straight up told me, oh, we don't have a mechanism for that. There's nothing we can do to fix it. So I don't know how effective that is. Yeah. So if you did, okay, here's a big one. Because I think a lot of you on this channel aren't intentionally buying things you shouldn't, right? I think there's definitely a pretty big subset of people who do that, because I've seen those social media groups and they have, 100,000 people in them or whatever. But I think on this channel, we're mostly, we've had enough conversations that I don't think anybody here is getting so much that they're spending it frivolously. But if you do maybe discover that you've purchased an ineligible item with SNAP by mistake, maybe at checkout, if you've got eligible and ineligible products mixed and it goes through, you're supposed to be able to swipe the card to cover the eligible things and then use a different payment method for the rest. If something there gets mixed up, you can reach out to the store and ask them to reprocess it with a different payment method or whatever if you're worried about it. You can also save any records in case there's questions later, but I think those instances are pretty rare. I think for the most part, these EBT glitches are an issue online. Now, along with that, getting on with our list of 5 things, supplements of any kind are off limits with SNAP. And that's why it's important to make sure that you're buying things that have a nutrition facts label and not a supplement facts label. Sometimes that can get really confusing because different energy drinks, some are supplements, some are nutrition facts, nutrition bars, granola bars, all sorts of things like that. It can get really confusing to know which is which. But generally, the USDA considers anything with a supplement facts label to be more like a vitamin or something than an actual food item. So just watch for that. I know that's going to get more confusing as some of these food restrictions roll out in 2026 as well, but there you go. Third thing I want you to watch out for that not a lot of people talk about is bulk buys and commercial items, because your food benefits are intended to feed your household. They're not intended to be used for sharing or resale. Even if you use like a home, even if you run like a home-based bakery or a similar business out of your home, it's supposed to be food that your family is eating. So if they're going to be deep diving into transaction histories, I would be wary of purchasing anything that looks like it could be for commercial intent. Obviously, this screen share here is a ludicrous example. This is like a 55-gallon drum of barbecue sauce that Amazon had marked as EBT eligible for a long time. It was like $1,000. Nobody needs 55 gallons of barbecue sauce. That's going to throw up some red flags, right? So just be wary. You're absolutely allowed to bulk buy items for your household. I know I shop in bulk because I have 5 kids. And when you've got a big household, that just makes sense. So please don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about your usual like number 10 cans of food or going to Costco, that sort of thing. I'm talking about the really, really outrageous bulk items. Like you can see this screenshot here. Amazon has this 25-pound box of seasoning salt marked as EBT eligible. That's probably more than anyone could use in a lifetime, so that's a little weird. You've got a 30-pound bag of truffle salt listed there for over $1,000 that's EBT eligible. Don't buy that either, right? That's going to look weird and kind of suspicious. So a lot of this comes down to just being wise, right? And not making crazy choices. My assumption here, they're trying to break down all these data silos and get all of this information in a system where it's easy to parse and analyze. And I would imagine that algorithms are going to be used to flag patterns of suspicious purchases. That's, again, just my assumption there. All right, I think we covered that. Once again, it's fine to buy bulk for your family. Just make sure that it's, reasonable and it doesn't look like you're maybe stocking a restaurant or selling that food for a profit, because that's definitely a big no-no. Another thing that you want to avoid is hot and prepared food. The USDA guidelines specifically prohibit foods that are hot at the point of sale from being purchased with EBT. Now, there are a few limited exceptions to this. Sometimes they'll do a hot food waiver when a disaster strikes. Some states have requested waivers. For example, I'm pretty sure it was Colorado when they said that they were going to ban soda and junk food and stuff. They also said they wanted to allow things like rotisserie chickens, and that waiver hasn't worked its way through yet. But there are some states that are working on allowing reasonable hot food purchases, but that's a whole separate issue. And then, of course, the restaurant meals program allows seniors, people with disabilities, and the homeless to purchase meals at restaurants. That's a whole separate program within SNAP as well that would be an exception to this slide. There are a lot of times where you'll go shopping somewhere like Walmart or a grocery store, and they'll have their hot food, and then next to the hot food, they'll have the hot food that's packaged and cooled down that's EBT eligible. That's generally fine. It's just not supposed to be hot when you buy it. Now, if you see a hot item that's marked as EBT eligible, I would assume that that is a glitch and stay away from it just to be safe. Now, of course, like I said, there is a list of items that's always prohibited, right? So this is straight from the USDA. You can see the little screenshot there. We pulled this straight from the USDA website. You are never allowed to buy beer, wine, liquor, cigarettes, tobacco, anything containing controlled substances like CBD. Vitamins, medicines, and supplements are a big no as well. Live animals, except shellfish, fish removed from water, and animals slaughtered prior to pickup from the store are also a no. Foods that are hot at the point of sale, again, and then any non-food items such as pet food, cleaning supplies, paper products, other household supplies, hygiene items, cosmetics, that sort of thing. Now, that's what the USDA has on their big no list. And I've been surprised how many people thought pet food was allowed. I've actually encountered people at stores that thought that was a thing, but that's pretty much always been there on the USDA list. So make sure that you stay away from that as well. Okay, so once again, shout out to our sponsor, Swagbucks, for today. They're awesome. I love using their service, and I'm going to hop in here and try to catch up on the chat. You guys have been awesome talking to each other while I've been just kind of going through these slides. So let's start here. King of the Catnap is talking about having difficulties with the application. So if you have a disability, the area agency on aging should be able to work with you even if you're not a senior. And in a lot of cases, they can help you with applications and things like that. So I would recommend reaching out to them. A lot of times your local library will have someone who can help you through the application as well. And there's supposed to be, I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be some sort of accommodation service as well, but I can investigate that and get back to you on that. But those are the places where I would start. Lovely Lady Williams says, I don't understand why $30 lobsters and crab legs can be bought with SNAP, but a bag of chips can't. So as of right now, a bag of chips can. It's in January of 2026 that all of those junk food restrictions and things like that are supposed to go into effect. So historically, chips have been fine. As of right now, they should be fine. The earliest that those states will be implementing those changes is going to be in January. But yeah, I get what you're saying. There's definitely some confusing things going on within the SNAP program right now. So let's see. Yes, so DH is pointing out that Washington's Attorney General sued to prevent, and like I said, a lot of states have sued to stop this data share, which is great. but some of them are already giving the data anyway because it's being demanded. So some states are withholding, some states are giving in, some states are saying they need more time. It's all very confusing, and it may take a while before we see the end result of how this court case is going to work itself out, because sometimes it just takes a long time. Let's see. Alan says, I only buy food that you're allowed to buy with EBT, and that's great. There is some stuff in the food stamps law that a lot of people don't know about. For example, you can use your SNAP benefits to buy produce bearing plants and seeds, things like that as well, that aren't strictly groceries, but can be used to grow groceries. But yeah, definitely staying within the rules is always a good guideline. It's important to know that those rules are changing in a lot of states. And we've gone over that in other videos, and hopefully you've seen those. All right, Hedge Hermit says it's all contradictory and too much for any person to memorize. And you are so right. And it's getting more and more confusing all the time as these different rules are coming out, and then they're pausing and unpausing requests. And it's hard to keep up. And I mean, I spend many hours a week trying to keep up. So yeah, you have my total sympathy there. So just to kind of fact check this, you absolutely do not have to use up your benefits every month. You do need to use your card at least once every 274 days to keep it active. If it goes more than about 9 months between transactions, then they will close it out. So a lot of people who only get that $23 a month, sometimes they'll save it up for a month or two and then go spend something, and that's fine. But you want to make sure that you don't accidentally wait too long, because then you could actually lose those benefits. But it's 274 days, I'm pretty sure, which is about 9 months. Yeah. And anyway, yeah, that should answer that. SR says, how could you get an item to bring up if it wasn't eligible? So that all goes down to how stores categorize their items, right? When you scan an item at the grocery store, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong with that. Especially like on Amazon, I've seen them miscategorize things like crazy. I'm assuming they're using some sort of automation there, but I don't know. But yeah, if there's an issue with the barcode or the way that the store has it labeled, I mean, the converse of this is also true, right? Like some people have gone in to buy, especially like tomato plants or produce bearing plants, which are allowed under the food stamps law, but then the store hasn't input that information correctly, so they're not marked as EBT eligible. A lot of that comes down to how the stores categorize those things. Okay, yeah, SR pointed out, yep, it rolls over to the next month, and that is exactly true. Let's see. Yeah, Justice says, how is it your fault if it goes through? That is the great question, right? And I have seen a lot of those influencers and people that run those glitch groups say, oh, well, if it was allowed to go through, then it's not my fault because they shouldn't have allowed it, or the government shouldn't have allowed it, or whatever. Ultimately, when you read the regulations over what constitutes an intentional program violation, it's pretty clear that, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, of course, but it seems pretty clear to me that the way it's worded, if you knew it shouldn't have worked and you tried it and it worked, it's still on you, which is why I encourage people to be so very cautious about it. But I think mainly that issue is going to come into play for people who were buying like the coffee maker or the Christmas gifts or something that's really egregiously beyond the scope of what SNAP should be used for. Yeah, Hedge Hermit says they gave you a letter and figured out that it was misinformed. It's really hard. It's hard to keep up on all the things, and sometimes there is misinformation that comes from official sources, and that's really, really difficult. Let's see. TJ says it sounds like entrapment that it's EBT eligible, and honestly, there are some things that anyway. Let's see. All right, a lot of these I think I've already answered. Okay. Beth says, what if you hoarded food during COVID because you were paranoid due to a mental illness? I don't think you're going to have an issue there. As long as the food that you bought was actually food, then you should be good to go. And by the way, EBT can be used for long-term food storage. So all of that should be fine. It's when you're buying like the 55-gallon drum of barbecue sauce or something that obviously goes beyond the reasonable scope of what SNAP should be used for. It's been a little while now, but I think I saw something in the news not too long ago about someone who was basically running a restaurant on their SNAP money. And they were buying like big things of, like donut icing and all this other stuff. And they were like, that doesn't make sense for a family. So that's kind of what you have to watch for. Okay, Arlen says, I live in California and have been on EBT for about 10 years, and these restrictions have always been in place. And that's true. The things that we recommended that you stay away from shouldn't necessarily be new, but there are things that a lot of people don't know about. And I've learned a lot from following the comments and the conversations that we have on this channel. And so sometimes we will do videos like this where it's not necessarily hard-hitting news, but it's stuff that people don't know about, right? And people are signing up for SNAP every day. And sometimes people are new to the program and they don't know what the rules are either, which is why we think it's important to continue sharing this kind of information. Riri says, what about places that are marked EBT eligible, such as KFC and McDonald's? That comes down to the restaurant meals program. And that is that special rule inside the food stamps law that lets people who are age 60 or older, disabled or homeless, buy those restaurant meals with EBT. As long as you're following those program guidelines and you meet the eligibility requirements, you shouldn't have any issues because that is absolutely allowed under the food stamps law. SR says, what about with EBT cash? That is a great question. I have always dealt more with SNAP benefits than EBT cash on this channel. There are still restrictions on what you can't do with EBT cash. I'm pretty sure, things like alcohol and whatnot still aren't allowed. From what I read, they are gathering data right now on SNAP benefits specifically, but I would not be surprised if we see that change. It looks like they're gathering data from a lot of different organizations. I saw some information requests coming out through Medicaid this week and other things, but those will be the topics for other videos. Yeah, Jocelyn says, I think it's different for each state. So the USDA does have a set guideline for when EBT is removed for non-use. And I'm going to look that up really quick so I make sure I'm giving you the right date here. 274 days is when that expungement happens. And that's kind of a set standard for all states. But there are, obviously they can get waivers and variations within those guidelines. So I haven't seen Hedge Hermit anything saying that like livestock feed is allowed, but I do know that produce-bearing plants and garden seeds that grow into food plants are eligible. So you can't buy like flower seeds or anything, but seeds for plants they do still allow. In fact, I think it was one of the I states. Was it Iowa? I think possibly that was trying to restrict what you can and can't buy with EBT based on their state tax code. For what groceries are taxable. And when they proposed that, the USDA came back and was like, yeah, but you still have to let them buy seeds. So they had to carve that out. So I think that allowance is still going to be staying, even despite all of the changes that are coming out. Let's see. Okay. Sorry, trying to catch up on the chat, and I always feel bad that you guys are watching me read. Let's see. So this is true. There are two sides to EBT, and we did have a slide on that earlier, but I kind of breezed by it because I just said it out loud that we were focusing today on the food stamp side. There are cash benefits that you can use for other essentials, and if you guys would like me to do a video on that specifically, just let me know. Let's see. Yeah. You're not wrong. I hope I'm saying your name right. Kadina says that when they take away some options, they need to provide additional money to buy the healthier foods. Healthier foods are definitely expensive. And I'm hoping that along with some of the restrictions that we're seeing come in, that we're going to see boosts to things like Double Up Food Bucks and the programs that do help you get those bonuses. If you are interested in ways to get additional money for healthier foods, we have a lot of different videos on that. We recently did one on the Add Milk program that gives you extra EBT when you buy milk. There's also Double Up Food Bucks that helps you get extra when you're buying fresh fruits and vegetables that are locally grown, things like that. So there are some programs, but they are limited, and I would love to see those get expanded. Let's see. Okay, Kiara says we can't buy Red Bull or vitamin water with SNAP where I live. If they have supplement facts labels, then that would be why. I was pretty sure Red Bull had a nutrition facts label, though. That's what I get for looking it up wrong. Yeah, Red Bull should be good to go until those restrictions kick in January of 2026. So I'd be interested to know where you live and where you found the information that you couldn't grab those. Lots of talk in here about getting chickens to grow food, by the way. That is not currently allowed under SNAP. They specifically exclude live animals. That being said, my family did recently acquire ducks and we're raising ducks for eggs. And oh my goodness, that is not as easy as I thought it would be. But that is a whole different conversation. Mystic says people buying these kinds of things make it hard on everyone else that are doing it the right way. And you're not wrong. Honestly, there is a whole like glitch group thing on TikTok and Facebook that drives me crazy because they really do bring a lot of bad attention to the program. And I'm sure that it's going to trigger a lot of crackdowns when certain people figure out what's going on there. So, let's see. So Jade is saying you can spend EBT on internet. No, you can't spend EBT on internet, but if you have an EBT card, you can get a discount on your internet service from certain internet service providers. So Comcast, AT&T, there's lots of different ISPs out there that have special low-income plans for people who receive EBT benefits. There's special applications for all that, and we have a list on our website of all of the different providers so that you can figure out which one is best for you. Totally recommend that. It is a super helpful program. I'm loving the chicken conversation here in the chat. You guys are awesome. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I may have misunderstood this question. You can spend your EBT online on websites like Amazon, Walmart, I'm pretty sure Target as well. And they also have EBT discounts for Amazon Prime, Walmart Plus, Target Circle as well. But yeah, you can shop online with SNAP in all 50 states right now. Yeah. And you can also shop online with EBT Cash, I think, in like 18 states. So and here I am catching up to the point in the chat where you guys were telling each other about Walmart and Amazon. You guys are awesome. Let's see. Yes, this is also true. Sherry points out in Alaska, they can buy fishing stuff. So if you live in rural Alaska, I have learned a lot about living in rural Alaska since I started low income relief. But if you do live there, grocery stores aren't super common and the prices are astronomical. So they do have special allowances for people in rural Alaska to buy certain types of hunting and fishing gear so that they can acquire their own food on their own consistently, which is fantastic. I think that's a great way to make that program more effective in that area. Oh, sorry, didn't realize my sound is on and I'm. Yeah, a lot of people talking about the shopping once a month, not being able to shop in the middle of the month because you run out of stuff. We do have a lot of other videos with additional food resources. So one of my favorite articles on our website, I think it's called 10 Ways to Get Free Food. And it walks through all sorts of different options that are available to you if you do experience that kind of feast and famine cycle where you get your benefits and you're okay and then you're not okay. Unfortunately, SNAP is designed to be supplemental, so they do expect you to provide for some of your own food throughout the month, and that means that it's never enough to actually get by on. Yeah. Okay. Sharon is saying for Indiana, the new purchases go into effect in January of 2026. All the different states are setting up kind of their own thing, but January 1st of 2026 has been the earliest implementation date I've seen. Some are as far out as July of 2026, but the earliest one is in January. So a lot of people are getting misinformation about that. I've heard a lot of people say that they've gone to the store and then maybe a cashier told them, oh, no, you can't buy that anymore. Da, 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 da. That's just the cashier probably using the best knowledge that they've gained from the news or whatever. To my knowledge, there hasn't been any sort of implementation changes on any of that yet. Let's see. Ooh, this is a great tip. You can buy seed packs at Dollar Tree. They had 4 packs for $1. That is super great. Kiara says, in Oregon, no stores here allow us to buy energy drinks, including Red Bull with Snap. That's interesting, because back, geez, it's been like 20 years ago now. But back when we had Snap, I know that I bought energy drinks in Oregon at least once. Oh, geez. Yeah, lots of conversations about my ducks I'm catching up on now too. Yeah, the ducks are great. They are definitely messy, and I definitely didn't understand how messy they were until we had them, which is a little bit crazy. Let's see. Yeah, Alaskans get the Alaska Permanent Fund. That's true, and that definitely helps. So, okay, so Cece says, well, you can read it here. I put it on screen. Yes, you can still put all of the items together and check out in that same process. The only thing that I was mentioning on that slide where I talked about it was if there's a problem in the system and maybe something got paid for that it shouldn't have, maybe make a note of that or follow up on it. I don't think it's something anybody's really going to have to deal with. I think most of the non-eligible items that get purchased are done very intentionally through a lot of those glitch groups. I don't think you're going to have any issues, but if you ever look at your receipt and you're like, ooh, that might be a thing, I maybe make a note of that in case it comes up later. I tend to be, just as a personal philosophy, I tend to be very overprotective of things. I've got some anxiety of my own. So when I notice things, I tend to try to make records because I've been in enough situations throughout my life to know that having more documentation is better than having no documentation. So that's just something that I would personally do. I'm not saying that you have to do it. I'm not saying that it's going to be an issue. Just something that you may want to consider if you noticed that there was an issue at some point in time. So following up here, you cannot buy a live chicken with EBT because they specifically prohibit you from buying any live animals. I can jump back here to the slide. This is straight from the USDA here, and it says you can never buy live animals except for basically shellfish, fish removed from water, and animals that are slaughtered prior to pickup. It doesn't sound like a dumb question to me, though, because it does make sense if you live in an area where you could have chickens to get eggs. That seems like it would be a really smart use of your EBT funds there, but it is not something that they're allowing at this time. So, it's so interesting, guys. I get so much feedback in the comments from people who say that they can't buy certain things that I know are eligible. And when you specify that that's not something that's able for you to do, I would love if you would name the store, because if it's a chain, I can always reach out to their press department and ask them what's going on, because some of those things that you guys are reporting don't make sense to me in terms of what I've seen in the rules and so on and so forth. So, yeah, would love to be able to follow up with some of that. So CU says, can you get herb plants on EBT? Yes, as long as the seeds, okay, so yeah, so seeds or produce bearing plants. So if it's edible, then it's fine. If it's a plant that doesn't produce food, then no, but I'm pretty sure herbs are going to be fine. Also, double up food bucks in some states will let you get extra herbs at your farmer's market with your EBT as well. So that's kind of a fun thing. So yeah, soup and tuna are totally EBT eligible, Stephen. Potato chips and soda are for now. There are 12 states, and I think that's something I didn't clearly specify before. Right now, there are 12 states that have received waivers to further restrict what you can buy with SNAP benefits. And in those 12 states, they are mostly aiming at soda and snack foods. So those restrictions will go into effect in January and later. And again, that is only 12 out of the 50 states. So it really depends on where you are located. Crazy Candy says, they can't possibly be mad about things you bought before the rules. I would love to believe that that is true, but I tend to be a little bit of a pessimist sometimes. Also, they are requesting those records back to January of 2020, and a lot of the rules were in effect then. They just weren't as well advertised. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Let's see. Okay, so Carol says, if you're on Medicaid in New Jersey, can I get the grocery card, or is it only if you have Medicare? I'm assuming that the grocery card you're referring to is probably a benefit of a Medicare Advantage plan, unless you're talking about SNAP benefits, in which case you can get SNAP benefits regardless. If you are asking about a Medicare plan, I would recommend that you reach out to our sponsor chapter. I know sponsored placements are annoying, but I did have a really great conversation with the people over at chapter this week, and we were talking about how their system works. Apparently, it only takes about 20 minutes for them to figure out what your best plan is. And they have tools that can even figure out like how much your copays for your medications would be on different plans. And it's just awesome. So do recommend those guys if you have any questions about Medicare at all. And that number should be showing up here in the ticker that you see at the bottom of the screen at some point in time. Because I think I put their number on everything at this point because they're just such a great resource. Let's see. Ooh, okay. Sherry says, I still haven't got the kids' summer EBT in Wisconsin, and they go back to school in a few weeks here. So, assuming that Wisconsin is participating, I guess is the first question. Yes, they are. Okay. So, I would reach out to your school district pretty quick here, because just taking a look at their website right now, I can see that they issued those benefits in June. So, it says that most of them were sent out June 7th. So if you haven't received that, I would definitely follow up with either the state or your school district. Most people receive those summer EBT benefits automatically, but there is a small subset of people who have to apply in order to receive them. And if somehow you fall into that category, you absolutely need to make sure you get that application in right away, because the cutoff for that is sometime in late August. And then if you have to apply and you don't apply before the end of late August, then your application goes for the next summer. And that would be a terrible loss. So please reach out to either the school district or the state or somebody to make sure that you get that processed right away, because you are running out of time. Let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so you did get a letter saying it would be coming in June, July, or August. I would still reach out anyway, because their main website is saying June 7th. So don't want to, yeah. Alrighty. Yeah, Sherry says, I wonder why the food industry is not fighting back. I'm sure they have to be. I haven't seen anything about it, but they are, like, that definitely seems weird. I'm sure there's something going on there. Let's see. This is also great advice from Kevin. Several farms do allow the use of SNAP for community-supported agriculture programs, that's what CSA stands for, at a discount price. So if you have a CSA in your area, first of all, they're great. It's a great way to get fresh produce. But I have seen a lot of them that will give you a discount up to half off, or maybe an extra food box with your order, things like that. So definitely go check that out if you live in an area where that is available. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so Amanda's pointing out that there are problems with the food stamps site being hacked. There is a lot going on with SNAP right now. The fraud is still in high gear. Thieves are still getting those cards through the use of skimmers and other online scams. We did a whole video on this recently. I don't think a lot of people saw it. It didn't seem to get a lot of views, but we talked about the EBT scams that are going on right now and how some states are still replacing those stolen benefits. So if you are affected by that, I would encourage you to go check out that video. I also know that some states are starting to implement some really interesting restrictions. I was notified by one of you, actually. It was great. It came through our tip line, that Maine has kind of locked down their EBT system so that you can only use it in their state or in the immediately neighboring states, because they are losing so much money to out-of-state thieves who are, cloning that card and then running wild with it. So do be very careful, because those thefts are still going on. Even in states like California that rolled out the chipped cards, they still left the magnetic stripe as a backup option, so it is still being stolen there, which is so frustrating. So there's that. All right, Joshua is asking, I can't find the August video. Could you help me? Which August video? I feel like we've gotten to daily streaming, so I have a lot of videos now. If you can tell me which one you're looking for, I would be happy to have to maybe have me or Stephanie jump in and try to find that for you really quick. So Kevin is also talking about food banks. Food banks are a great resource. Love food banks, and there's all sorts of programs like food banks that you can use in addition to your local food bank as well. Things like those little community pantries, community fridges, Lasagna Love, all sorts of stuff. And we have all of that in that article I mentioned earlier about the 10 ways that you can get free food. Yeah. So, okay, Kira's got some good stuff here too. Yeah, don't slide your card. Most of those skimming devices, as soon as you slide your card, it pulls your PIN and the card number from your thing and then transmits it to a scammer in another location, and that's how they get your benefits. Because once they have that, they can just clone your card and do whatever they want with it, and that is terrible. So, okay, Head Sherman is talking about a lack of resources in East Texas. I am going to put that on our research list to see if we can find some help out there. Let's see. Okay. So Vegas Prepper One says that it usually takes off the food, but it didn't. I don't think you would be in any trouble. I am not a social worker, so I can't give you one-on-one advice about your situation, and there's a lot of questions I would have to ask to get to the bottom of that anyway. I would check and make sure that the first thing that comes to my mind is that I would check and make sure that you still have a balance on the food side of your card, because those thefts are crazy and they're happening a lot. So if your benefits were stolen and you didn't have any food, maybe that's why it happened. But yeah, I would go check that out. And Kiara also says St. Vincent de Paul is a great resource, and they really are. They are so good at so many things. Let me see if I can grab this video for Joshua really quick. And yeah, here we go. Okay. Sorry about the typo in my response there. I was in a hurry. But there is the link for the video that you're looking for in the chat. So Jeff is saying, do you have free community meals where you live? Senior centers are a great place to go for free community meals. There's also just a lot of other resources along with that, but free community meals are great. You can usually call 211 is a great place to find those. Also talking to your local churches, because a lot of churches are involved in donating to that. I know the church I attend, we give every month to the soup kitchen up here. So check with churches, check with 211. Your regular organizations, Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, Catholic Charities, those are going to have good resources. Community action councils or community action agencies often maintain lists of those as well. So if you're looking for free community meals, that's always a great place to go. All righty. Well, this appears that I have reached the end of the chat. I'm always not quite sure because of the tool that I use. I just always worry that I'm leaving somebody out. I appreciate you being here with me and going over all of this information with me. Let's see. Oh, another one popped up. Ooh, PACE for seniors. Yes, I've heard great things about that. We're going to be doing a video on that again soon as well, because there's a lot of great things within PACE as well. Okay, I should stop getting distracted. I do have something I have to go do here shortly. So once again, thank you for joining me. I will be back again tomorrow.